So I trust you found the YouTube thumbnails for the videos this week synchronistic and entertaining. We had a Matrix theme this week. And speaking of the Matrix, I found some similarity between the relationship of Abdullah, who was an Ethiopian Kabbalistic rabbi who mentored Neville Goddard, and the relationship between Morpheus and Neo. And I wonder if the original Matrix movie was perhaps inspired by the story of Abdullah and Neville Goddard. I also find Morpheus's ways quite similar to Abdullah, and Neville's features also remind me of Neo. So, to continue this thread of inspired action, I'd like to discuss some aspects from one of Neville's stories of Abdullah and also his lecture on mental diets, one of my favorite lectures. Now, in Thursday's video, we discussed autosuggestion, and I mentioned that I live by both the Emmett Fox style mental diet and the Neville Goddard style mental diet. Emmett Fox style being denying thoughts of disharmony, and Neville Goddard style being affirming thoughts of harmony from the premise of already having as applicable. And so today I want to discuss what I mean by as applicable upon reflection of the results I've experienced as a result of applying it as applicable. He says, talking to oneself is a habit everyone indulges in. We could no more stop talking to ourselves than we could stop eating and drinking. All that we can do is control the nature and direction of our inner conversations. Now, this all that we can do, as he says, if done from the premise of our ideals, ideally changes all that appears, including what appears as body and how body appears to move, as body appears and appears to be animated by law. So, as mentioned in Thursday's video, we can apply autosuggestion to bring us into the state of the wish fulfilled, such as the Dr. Millikan one Neville shared, which is, I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. Then on what appears as the bridge of incidents, as the journey to actualizing the vision, as all power is now, by inner self-talk we can relate ideally to what appears to adjust our state of being accordingly if applicable. For example, let's say on what appears as the journey to actualizing the vision, one may read a text message from another and imagine it in a not-so-ideal way, by which they bring themselves into a not-so-ideal state through their self-talk in relation to the message. This is why operating with awareness of the inner conversations in relation to what appears as outer conversations is helpful. As he says, we are told that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. But do we know that our thinking follows the tracks laid down in our own inner conversations? To turn the tracks to which we are tied in the direction to which we want to go, we must put off our former conversation, which is called in the Bible the old man, and be renewed in the spirit of our mind. So the heart in the Bible is referring to the subconscious aspect of mind. Thus what you think feelingly upon in relation to what appears now is what is queued up to appear as what appears as the future. So by applicable, I mean, if you read some information, and if what you are thinking feelingly upon in relation to it is not ideal, reimagine with self-talk from the premise of having, to allow it to be what you desire it to appear as. This has an impression on the subconscious mind to queue up to appear as what appears as the future. He says, speech is the image of mind. Therefore, to change our mind, we must first change our speech. By speech is meant those mental conversations we carry on with ourselves. So current inner speech reveals the image and likeness of the state of consciousness. And if not ideal, we can change our state of consciousness by thinking feelingly now from the premise of already being what we desire to be. For example, thoughts of rejection, in which one may say they are not good enough, smart enough, XYZ in a not so ideal way enough, could be transformed to I am ideal now. I am whole and complete now. I have everything now. This leaves an impression on the subconscious mind, queuing up for the world to appear that way. And as there are infinite possible mental conversations to choose from in imagination, so can they be allowed to physically appear as infinite possible reflections as the outer experiences of life, as he says. The world is a magic circle of infinite possible mental transformations, for there are an infinite number of possible mental conversations. When we discover the creative power of inner talking, we will realize our function and mission in life. Then we can act to a purpose. Without such knowledge, we act unconsciously. Everything is a manifestation of the mental conversations which go on in us without our being aware of them. But as civilized beings, we must become aware of them and act with a purpose. This reminds me of a story Neville shared about Abdullah. He mentioned that Abdullah did not have quibbles or entertain thoughts that he would not consider ideal. He always enjoyed first class wherever he went, regardless of what appears to one who does not think feelingly ideally. In those years, Neville mentioned that Abdullah would not be allowed to go to the box office and buy a seat in the orchestra, and if he did, they would sell a seat in the balcony. Again, so it could appear that way to one who does not think feelingly ideally. But Abdullah thought feelingly ideally from the premise of having first class. Neville said that Abdullah would not let him go buy the seats. Instead, Abdullah would walk to the box office and order 2 tickets in the center, and he would be clear, which reflected his clear thinking. He would say, I don't want too far back, not beyond the 6th row, right in the center. Yes, sir, they would say, and hand over the tickets. This is the power of thinking feelingly from the premise of having. It changes everything. I found there is no need to argue or convince anyone in this world that appears, as this world that appears as what is imagined by law, as stated in John 1:1-3. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. Now one might look at the physical appearances, bypassing this understanding, and thus be unaware that the one cause within, I am, was related to by their inner speech in a way that resulted as the mirror reflections of life experiences. So to be clear, he says, as long as there's no change in our inner talking, the personal history of us remains the same. Our inner conversations represent in various ways the world we live in. Our individual worlds are self-revelations of our own inner speech. We are told that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof. For by their words they shall be justified, and by their words they shall be condemned. They advance into the future to confront us as wasted or invested words. My word, said the prophet, shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in all the things whereto I send it. So I like how he said invested words. And now is the time to invest in ideal inner speech from the premise of having, for return on investment, like for example with compounding interest. I teach 3 aspects when it comes to finances. Number 1, earning a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. Number 2, enjoying what you would consider a wonderful lifestyle with your lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. And number 3, investing some of your lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit to receive dividends or passive income, while the value of the initial investment, and if applicable, contributions to it, compounds annually. So ideal self-talk from the premise of having has an immediate positive effect on how you feel, your behaviors, and long-term positive effects diversified to all areas of your life. I started this journey in 2004 with Think and Grow Rich, and I'm still experiencing the results from those earlier auto-suggestions as we've been discussing throughout the stories I've been sharing all throughout the videos. And you and I are no different. You have all the power now and always now to think feelingly from the premise of having what you desire. To desire a state is to have it. As he says, now is the accepted time. Now is the day of salvation. It is only what is done now that counts, even though its effects may not be visible until tomorrow. We call, not out loud, but by inner effort of intense attention. To listen attentively as though you heard is to create. The events and relationships of life are your word made visible. Again, as stated in John 1:1-3, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. He says, Our attitudes unfold within us in the form of mental conversations. Inner talking from the premise of fulfilled desire is the way to consciously create circumstances. Our inner conversations are perpetually outpictured all around us in happenings. So everything is happening. Everything appears to just be happening. And all these happenings, although may not apparently appear to be visibly linked, is invisibly linked to the one cause within I am, as the inner conversations are perpetually outpictured all around us as happenings. He says, if you practice this art of controlled inner speaking, you too will know what a thrill it is to be able to say, and now I told you, before it come to pass, that when it is come to pass, ye might believe. You will be able to consciously use your imagination to transform and channel the immense creative energies of your inner speech from the mental, emotional level to the physical level. And I do not know what limits, if any, there are to such a process. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's go ahead and conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You could say, I acknowledge now in imagination that what I desire, I already have. To desire is to have. I acknowledge by inner speech from the premise of having. The world is made visible accordingly by grace of the unseen power within me. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.